1994. I was a 3-star general. I flew in. I wanted to find out what was this fighting in the Balkans. What was going on? There were Serbs, there were Croats, there were Muslims. People talked about Kosovo, but Kosovo wasn't even on the map. What was going on? So I went in, I met the Bosnian leaders, I met Serb General Mladic. The next year I came back with Ambassador Richard Holbrooke, and we laid out a peace proposal for Bosnia. It worked because Milosevic was at the end of his rope. He knew he couldn't keep going. And I spent 100 hours with Milosevic in these negotiations. And during this time we said, but what about Kosovo? What about Kosovo? He said, Kosovo, no. That's my country. I won't talk about Kosovo. So we did the Dayton Peace Agreement. We put NATO forces in Bosnia. But then I became the NATO commander. And then the repression intensified in Kosovo. And people came to me and they said, they're arresting teachers. They won't let us teach in our own language. They're running us out of business. We can't be in the government service at all. They're trying to take our land, etc., etc. The Albanian general came to me and said, in 1998, they're firing mortars against the villages around Gjoka. He said, we can see them from the high ground. So we proposed to NATO a military mission that would tell Slobodan Milosevic to stop using force to try to repress the desire for freedom in Kosovo. Milosevic didn't like that. I talked to him in June of 1998, and he said to me, he said, General Clark, I see your airplanes. He said, but these people in Kosovo, they're my people. I wouldn't hurt them. So the problem continued. By September, 400,000 Kosovar Albanians were in the mountains because they knew what happened if you stayed in the villages. You had the terrorist groups come through, the so-called paramilitaries. Sometimes they were protected by the Serb police, and the Serb military was there in increasing force. And it was dangerous. So I went to the Secretary of Defense and I asked for help from the United States. We mobilized NATO. We called Richard Holbrooke back. We talked to Milosevic again. We asked him to please pull your forces out of Kosovo that are causing this problem. Leave these people alone. So at first, the first mission, I went with him. He lied. He tried to tell me the forces weren't there. I said, well, they are there, and I named the forces. Then he turned to his General Harris and said, are these forces there making an act, you know? I said, okay, we will pull them out. But he didn't pull them out. I went back a second time. I talked to him. At this time, I said, Mr. President, if you don't pull these forces out and comply with the United Nations, NATO is going to tell me to bomb you. And he said, oh, well, General Clark, I said, you don't want to be bombed by NATO. He said, no, you're right. He said, he said to me then, you must talk to my generals, as though it was the generals doing it. So I spent an evening with his generals, and they said, they had a map. They said, terrorists, terrorists. I said, these aren't terrorists. I said, and you can't solve this problem by killing people. They're just people who want to have their own government and have their own lives. Don't you understand that every person you kill makes it worse for you? You're going to lose. So this argument went on for several hours. In the end, they didn't change their views. Finally, I went back a third time, and this time we got Milosevic to sign the agreement that he would pull out. That was in November of 1998. And the forces pulled out, but the Russians came in and told them, don't worry about NATO. You know, Papa Bear will protect you. And so right after January in 1999, all those forces came back in again. He started killing people. First he killed 53 farmers in the village of Rajok. We tried to do another round of negotiations, because really you should never use force except as a last resort. Because it's true, you know, when you start bombing and killing people, they don't forgive you. They don't forget. It's not like turn the other cheek and do it again. People hate you for it. So we didn't want to bomb. But he insisted on trying to kill people in Kosovo. And so on the 24th of March, we initiated the NATO operations. And after 77 days of strikes, Milosevic agreed to pull his forces out of Kosovo. And that's how we got on the road to an independent country in Kosovo.